Very pleased now to have Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, joining us. He's also the former Israel ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Dermer, since we have not spoken since the war started, I just want to offer my condolences to you and your country. We know who started the war, as I point out. We're seeing how the world is reacting, though, already to what was happening in Gaza. And now you see what's happening in the north today with the increase of the air power, the bunker busting, bombs leaving such craters and such devastation, which has only increased the condemnation in the UN and elsewhere. Are you worried about this growing sentiment around the world?
Well, I think it's important that the condemnation be directed at Hamas because they are using their people as human shields. I think Dennis said that earlier. Your reporter said that we're arguing that they're using their people as human shields. That's not an argument. It's a fact. They use the hospitals as part of their whole terror tunnel network underneath Gaza. We know it's there. We're working, our soldiers are working in order to remove that underground terror tunnel network. They use hospitals, they use mosques, they use schools, they use all of these things as part of their war machine. So it's not an argument, it's a fact. And I think as you're going to see our soldiers operate in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, you're going to uncover that to the eyes of the world to see exactly what type of enemy that we're dealing with. I think the Secretary of State made it very clear what the nature of this enemy, their brutality, the horrific crimes that they perpetrated against Israelis, but they're also perpetrating a war crime against the Palestinians, which is to use these people as human shields. I also, Andrea, want to correct something else that your reporter said. He said there's no safe zone in the South. And he said what the Prime Minister said is not true. That is not true what your reporter said. There is a safe zone. It's actually in the southwest part of Gaza. No Israeli official has ever said that everywhere in the South is safe and that we're going to give the terrorists who were in the South immunity. There is a place in the southwest corner on the coast where from the beginning, 3 weeks ago, we've told people to go there. You have humanitarian assistance that is flowing in there, food, water, and medicine. You have tents that have been set up for the people there, and we have implored the people to get out of the northern part of the Gaza Strip. The good news, Andrea, is that about 90% of people have left the northern part of the Gaza Strip in the areas that our military is operating in. As for the attack that just happened, I don't know the facts. But let's not rush to judgment. You mentioned what had happened with a hospital about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I'm old enough to remember what happened in Jenin, where the whole world condemned Israel and said there were 5,000 people who were killed there. And then that number went down to 500 people. And then after the UN did an investigation, after a few months, they realized there were 54 people who were killed and 48 terrorists. But that was after everybody around the world demonized Israel and condemned it. So let's not rush to judgment. Let's condemn the actions of Hamas, both in endangering our civilians and putting their own people in harm's way. The most important thing that we can do, and I think Dennis may have said it earlier, is to rid Gaza of Hamas. It's going to be important for Israel and for our own security, but it's also going to be important for giving the Palestinians a better future.
Mr. Dermer, first of all, we have seen that for several weeks, for at least 2 weeks, no food, no water came in, and no fuel has come in. So they did not open that crossing, and that was a combination of things, including
Andrew,
Egypt.
That's not true. What you just said is not true. We've had trucks come in for the last 2 weeks. That's not true. We haven't had enough, and we're trying to ramp it up because, you know, we have a problem. When the international community pressured Israel to put in humanitarian assistance, everyone said, you got to get all this stuff to the people of Gaza. You got to get concrete so they can build homes, that they can build hospitals, they can build schools. And what happens? Hamas takes all of that and uses it to build their war machine. We have started very early in this war to get food and medicine and water in. We didn't do it from the Israeli side. We did it from the Egyptian side. But there's a problem. How do you inspect what's going in? Do we want to have anti-tank rockets go into Gaza unimpeded? I don't think you want that. The United States doesn't want that. Israel doesn't want it. So we had to set up an inspection mechanism on our border with Egypt so those trucks can go and be inspected. Today, there should be about 60 trucks that are going in. Tomorrow, it should be close to 100. And we've ramped this up at a time, by the way, when we have 240 Israeli hostages in Gaza. They are holding 33 children, including babies, hostage in Gaza. And let me tell you, the Israeli people are not thrilled about putting humanitarian assistance in when we have over 200 citizens being held hostage in Gaza.
So we'll get the exact date when the humanitarian aid, but Secretary Blinken was warning for, I believe, at least 10 days when people were being told to go south that nothing was coming across. And that was not necessarily Egypt's fault. I mean, Israel's fault. Egypt was holding it up. Hamas was blocking it. And people still can't get out. We know that people still have not been able to get out. No people have been able to get out.
That's right.
1,000 people are still, and they're being blocked by Hamas. And I've been saying that since this program began today. And
well,
they have.
You're quite right. At first, I mean, Hamas, and I think somebody earlier said, I don't know if it was Dennis or another speaker said that Hamas is essentially holding the entire people of Gaza hostage. I think that's true. There are thousands of foreign nationals that Hamas is not letting out, including maybe, I think the number's about 1,000 Americans, but you have nationals from countries around the world that are desperate to get out of Gaza. We want them to leave. Egypt has said that they will allow them to leave, but Hamas doesn't want them to leave, and they're holding them hostage. This is why the entire international community, Andrea, has to use this moment and the atrocity that happened on October 7th, which was the worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust, and in proportionate terms is equivalent to 20 9/11s. We have to stop this so-called cycle. They say the cycle of violence. You know what the real cycle of violence is, Andrea? It's when Hamas uses people as human shields, and when Israel defends itself against terrorism, and those innocents are killed, which is a tragedy, the whole world comes down on Israel instead of coming down on Hamas. We should see a UN Security Council meeting to condemn Hamas. And guess what? That hasn't happened yet. The worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust, and the UN Security Council cannot get together and condemn Hamas for what happened on October 7th. I think that's shameful. And I'm glad to say that the President of the United States and the Secretary of State of the United States are standing with Israel at this very difficult time.
And you're absolutely correct. There still has not been a UN vote to condemn what happened on October 7th. And there has been widespread criticism in the U.S. of that. Absolutely correct. I want to ask you about reporting in the Jerusalem Post and elsewhere in Israel that the former and current Mossad chiefs, David Bernea and former Mossad chief Yossi Cohn, made a secret trip to Qatar over the weekend, obviously to talk about hostages. Can you give us, anything at all on this very important possible breakthrough?
Well, since I'm an observer in the War Cabinet, I don't want to get into specific details about this or that report. I can tell you that we're trying to do everything to bring those hostages back. We had an operation the other day, which we were able to free one of these hostages with an operation. We also had 4 who were released before that, and we'd like to see if we can hopefully find an agreement to allow these hostages to be returned to their families. We believe that the military operation that is right now happening in the north has increased the pressure on Hamas. So it is both enabling us to achieve our military objectives, which is to eliminate Hamas's its military, to end its rule in Gaza, and to ensure that Gaza no longer presents a threat and poses a threat to Israel. But we also think it is accelerating or increasing the chances, I should say, of hopefully getting some sort of an agreement to release the hostages.
You don't think that this military operation might further endanger the hostages? That is a view expressed by some of the hostage families, as you well know. And there's been political criticism, against the operation within Israel.
Well, that's not the assessment of our experts in dealing with this. And I think the operation, there's always risks whenever you do a military operation, of course. But our assessment then and today is that it actually increases the chances and the prospects of getting to an agreement. And I'm not sure that the rescue operation that happened the other day would have happened had we not actually gone in and started our military operation.